Clint Eastwood was born Clinton Eastwood Jr. on May 31, 1930, in San Francisco, at a time when America was sliding into the Great Depression. His early years were defined by movement and instability, as his family relocated frequently across California in search of work. These constant changes shaped a young boy who learned to rely on himself, observe quietly, and endure without complaint. Eastwood often spoke later about how those years instilled discipline and self-reliance rather than bitterness. He wasn't raised with dreams of stardom, but with a practical understanding of survival and restraint. That emotional economy, saying little, feeling deeply, would become central to his screen persona and real-life demeanor. While many actors are driven by early validation, Eastwood's ambition grew slowly, rooted in patience and grit. Those formative hardships didn't harden him, they sharpened him. They created the man who could stand still in chaos, speak softly in a loud world, and carry emotional weight without ever asking for sympathy. The road to recognition. Eastwood's path into Hollywood was anything but meteoric. After being drafted into the U.S. Army during the Korean War era, he returned to California unsure of his future. Acting came gradually, through bit parts and long stretches of rejection. His first major break arrived in the late 1950s with the television western Rawhide, where he played Rowdy Yates for 8 seasons. Week after week, audiences watched him grow into a steady, understated presence. The show didn't make him a superstar, but it made him reliable, and in Hollywood, reliability is power. What set Eastwood apart even then was restraint. He didn't overplay scenes or chase attention. He learned timing, silence, and screen economy. When Rawhide ended, many assumed his career might fade. Instead, a risky decision to work with Italian director Sergio Leone changed everything. Eastwood stepped into unfamiliar territory, unaware that this gamble would redefine not only his career, but the entire Western genre. Reinventing the Western myth. In the 1960s, Clint Eastwood became an international icon through Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy. As the man with no name, he dismantled the traditional American Western hero and rebuilt him into something colder, morally ambiguous, and quietly dangerous. These films were initially dismissed by critics, yet audiences were captivated. Eastwood's characters didn't explain themselves, they simply acted. This minimalism felt revolutionary. He wasn't portraying justice as clean or comforting, but as necessary and often brutal. The success of the trilogy elevated Eastwood from television actor to global star, but more importantly, it gave him creative leverage. He began to understand storytelling from the inside out, how framing, pacing, and silence could carry meaning. These lessons stayed with him long after he left the poncho behind. The Man with No Name wasn't just a role, it was a philosophy of performance. Eastwood had found a voice that said more by saying less, and cinema would never look quite the same again. The Dirty Harry era and public controversy. The 1970s brought Clint Eastwood another defining role, Inspector Harry Callahan in Dirty Harry. The character ignited controversy, praised by some as a symbol of law and order resolve, and criticized by others as an endorsement of vigilantism. Eastwood understood the tension and leaned into it. He didn't portray Harry as likable, but as necessary within a broken system. Once again, he occupied moral gray space, refusing to simplify complex issues. The role cemented his image as a tough, unflinching enforcer, yet this public persona often obscured the man behind it. While audiences saw steel, Eastwood was increasingly interested in nuance. He began directing more frequently, shaping stories with empathy rather than bravado. Even during his most hard-edged years, he was quietly preparing for reinvention. The Dirty Harry films made him one of the most bankable stars in the world. But Eastwood never allowed popularity to define his artistic direction. He was already looking beyond the badge. A director emerges. As Clint Eastwood matured, his focus shifted decisively behind the camera. Directing offered him something acting never fully could: control over emotional tone. Films like Unforgiven, Mystic River, and $1 Million Baby revealed a filmmaker deeply concerned with regret, responsibility, and the cost of violence. Unforgiven dismantled the Western myth he once helped build, portraying aging, guilt, and consequences with aching honesty. These weren't loud films. They lingered. Eastwood's direction favored long takes, minimal music, and performances that trusted the audience to feel rather than be told. His work earned multiple Academy Awards and a new level of respect. Critics who once dismissed him were forced to reconsider. What became clear was that Eastwood's greatest strength wasn't toughness, but empathy. He understood flawed people because he never pretended otherwise. His films reflected a lifetime of observation, restraint, and emotional discipline. Proof that reinvention isn't about abandoning the past, but interrogating it. The private man behind the icon. Despite global fame, Clint Eastwood guarded his personal life fiercely. He became known as Hollywood's quintessential loner, present but unreachable. Over the decades, he fathered 8 children with multiple partners, maintaining relationships that were often private and complex. Rather than tabloid spectacle, Eastwood chose silence. He rarely explained himself, and when he did, it was without defensiveness. This privacy wasn't secrecy for its own sake. It was protection. Eastwood believed some things lost meaning when exposed. Love, for him, was never performative. Yet that emotional reserve also carried consequences. Those closest to him often described a man deeply loyal, but difficult to fully reach. Fame amplified this distance, turning him into a symbol more than a person. While the public consumed his image of control and independence, his inner life remained layered and unresolved. The contrast between his legendary presence and private vulnerability would become most evident in one relationship that left a lasting imprint. Sondra Locke and a creative collision Clint Eastwood met actress Sondra Locke in 1975 while filming The Outlaw Josie Wales. Their connection was immediate and intense, rooted in creative partnership as much as romance. Locke was not content to exist in Eastwood's shadow. She challenged him intellectually and artistically. Over the next decade, they collaborated on multiple films and shared a deeply intertwined personal life. Their relationship was passionate, productive, and often turbulent. Locke pushed against Eastwood's emotional restraint while he struggled with the vulnerability she demanded. This dynamic fueled both creativity and conflict. When the relationship ended in the late 1980s, it did so painfully and publicly, involving legal disputes that overshadowed their shared history. While time softened the headlines, the emotional impact lingered. Eastwood rarely spoke about the breakup, but those close to him noted a shift. For a man accustomed to emotional control, the loss represented something unresolved, an experience that couldn't be managed through discipline or distance. The weight of memory. In later years, Clint Eastwood reflected more openly on love, loss, and emotional consequence. Without sensationalism or accusation, he acknowledged that some relationships leave marks that never fully fade. Sondra Locke, he implied, was one of those people, not because of conflict, but because of connection. She saw him beyond the roles, beyond the myth, and that kind of intimacy is both rare and destabilizing. Eastwood never framed himself as a victim, nor did he romanticize pain. Instead, he spoke of memory, quiet moments, shared understanding, and the weight of things left unsaid. These reflections revealed a man deeply aware of emotional cost. Fame hadn't wounded him. Success hadn't undone him. What stayed with him were moments of genuine vulnerability. In old age, surrounded by accolades and legacy, Eastwood seemed most aware of what cannot be awarded or replaced. His strength, paradoxically, was shaped by what he could not control. The truth behind the legend. Clint Eastwood's legacy is often summarized in toughness, masculinity, and authority, but that is only part of the story. Beneath the icon is a man defined by restraint, reflection, and emotional depth. His greatest films are not about power, but consequence. His most enduring relationships were not the loudest, but the most challenging. Eastwood was never broken by failure or excess. He was shaped by connection. The legend endures not because he avoided feeling, but because he understood its cost. As his career spans decades and genres, what remains most compelling is his humanity. Complex, guarded, and honest in hindsight. In the end, Clint Eastwood didn't conquer emotion, he learned to live with it, and perhaps that is the quiet truth behind one of Hollywood's most enduring figures. The strongest characters are not those who feel nothing, but those who feel deeply and keep going anyway.